So this is the book we're going to be reading from, The Bull Rider's Son by Cathy McDavid. And she's a New York bestsellers time best author. Let me read a little bit on the back. You can see how many points of light I have got pointed out here. Too close to home. Cassidy Beckett has a secret she's kept for 6 years, the identity of her son's father. She can't hide the truth much longer. The Easy Money Arena new bull manager is Shane Westcott, also happens to be the boy's handsome uncle. But Cassidy will do anything to protect her young son, even if it means steeling her heart against Shane's nearly irresistible charm. It doesn't take Shane long to figure out two things. Cassidy's son is his nephew, and his feelings for the boy's beautiful mother go way beyond friendship. As a single dad, Shane knows how important it is to be a father to the child. He also knows that the men in Cassidy's life have let her down before. Can Shane convince Cassidy to face the truth without losing her trust or his heart? Okay, well, let's start at the very beginning, because that's always a good place to start. As you all know, during the epidemic, I have signed back up for the Harlequin novels. I am still receiving Harlequin novels by mail. Right now, it's the Western Hearts that I'm receiving, and only the Western Hearts, because with Goodwill being open right now, I have been able to go back to Goodwill and find some books there. Not many, but some. But I do get 6 books every month right now from the Western Hearts series. When this series ends, I don't know if they have another cowboy series available, so you'll have to stay tuned to see if there is going to be more of the Western Hearts series or some sort of Western series continued. Since 2006, New York Times bestseller Cathy McDavid has been happily penning contemporary westerns to Harlequin every day. She gets to write about handsome cowboys, riding the range or busting a bronc. It's a tough job, but she's willing to make the sacrifice. Cathy shares her Arizona home with her own real-life sweetheart and trio of odd pets. Her grown twins have left to embark on their lives to their own, and she couldn't be prouder of their accomplishments. Okay, we're going to start in on page 12. Let's head off to the office and start on your paperwork, Mercer said. Mercer led the way. Sonny is a stickler about having all the proper payroll forms filled out. It was well known among the people in the rodeo world that Mercer and Sonny Beckett, divorced for 25 years, were in the business together. It was an unusual arrangement for sure, but a successful one. Sonny oversaw the business side of the arena, and Mercer oversaw the livestock. Their 3 grown children worked alongside them. Ryder was a former agency executive, handled the arena's marketing and promotion, while their youngest daughter, Liberty, taught riding and supervised trail rides. Cassidy, their oldest daughter, and the Beckett family member Shane knew better than others, was in charge of bucking jackpots and team pinning competitions and roping clinics. That was page 1213. He half hoped to see her in the office. The stab of disappointment he felt when he didn't took him by surprise. He always liked Cassidy. In fact, they dated briefly in their late teens for about a month. In those days, both of them were focused on rodeo careers, and the relationship quickly fizzled. Some years later, she and Shane's brother Hoyt began dating. Their relationship lasted longer and was more serious, though it too had ended. Shane remembered being a little jealous and thinking his brother was a fool to let her go. But that had been a long time ago. After Cassidy and Hoyt's breakup, she quit barrel racing together, and Shane crossed paths with her periodically, mostly when he came to the Easy Money for a rodeo. Their chats never lasted long, and he assumed it was because of whatever resentment she still harbored toward his brother. That was page 14. Moving forward, I'm going to try to get us to at least page 50 tonight. Page 18. His third sight, and one cementing his boots carpeted to the floor, was that of Cassidy Beckett, pushing aside the accordion divider, separating the sleeping area from the rest of the trailer. She swallowed a small, startled gasp, and her hand fluttered to her throat where it rested. "Sorry, I wasn't expecting you yet. Mom asked me to put fresh towels in the bathroom and change the sheets on the bed. You don't have to go to any trouble. The words caught in his throat before he choked them out. Shane had always thought of Cassidy as pretty. Sometimes during the intervening years she had grown into a striking beauty with large dark eyes and shoulder-length hair, the same chocolate-brown shade as a wild mink. He stopped thinking about why his brother let her go and began wondering why he shouldn't ask Cassidy out himself. No reason not to. She was exactly the kind of woman he fancied. More importantly, she had no lingering attachments to his brother, who married someone else shortly after he and Cassidy split. She also had a son close in age to Bria, and who would be probably understanding of his single dad responsibly. "It's good to see you again," he said, and strode forward to greet her with a hug. Suddenly Shane's new job had an altogether different perk, one which quite appealed to him. Page 19. The initial alarm Cassidy experienced upon seeing Shane tripled when he swept her up in an enthusiastic embrace. It was bad enough her father had hired him. Worse that her mother insisted she stock the trailer with fresh linens. Disastrous that he thought he'd caught her here. With him blocking the narrow passageway to the door, escape was impossible. She had no choice but to surrender his powerful hold on her. "Good to see you too," she managed to reply. He didn't immediately release her. Cassidy was worried. He'd sensed the tensions covering through her and attempted to extract herself. He let her go long enough in the length of time from head to toe before hauling her against him for a second time. "You look great." "Thanks," she mumbled, refusing to return the compliment, and by admitting how incredible he looked and smelled. Good heavens, that man had been without the bowls for at least an hour by her estimation. He should reek to high heaven. Instead, her face firmly planted in the crook of his shoulder, she inhaled that spicy and appealing scent of whatever aftershave he used this morning. Oh, the aftershave gets you every time. Anyway, with their broad shoulders, lean muscular builds, and regularly chiseled profiles, both Westcott brothers were head-turning handsome. Back when all three of them were competing on the rodeo circuit, Cassidy had considered Hoyt to be the more attractive of the pair. No longer. Shane had not only held his own in the looks department, he surpassed his older brother. Finally, thank goodness, his grip slackened and freed her. "So have you been, girl?" Okay." Girl, to her horror and chagrin, her heart gave a small flutter at that term of endearment he used during their short-lived romance. She dismissed it. Being attracted to Shane was impossible for too many reasons to list. "Sorry I interrupted you." She attempted to pass him. "Let me get out of your way. I'm sure you want to pack." "Stay a while." He didn't budge. "We can catch up." "I promised Liberty I'd help her with writing classes this afternoon." Surely her sister would forgive her this one small fib, considering the circumstances. It was Cassidy remembered her sister didn't know about the circumstances. No one did for certain except their mother, and Cassidy had sworn her to secrecy. "That's not for another hour." Shane smiled sheepishly, and dang it all appealingly. "Your dad mentioned the schedule earlier." Her father, of course, Cassidy thought with a groan. He alone was responsible for hiring Shane and throwing her life into utter turmoil. "We have a new student signing up. Come on." Shane gestured to the dining table. "It's been years since we had a real talk." 2021-22. It was true. Cassidy had avoided him and Hoyt like the plague, determined not to let either of them near her son, Benji. It hadn't been easy. Shane had competed regularly until recently, and often visited the easy money. 5 minutes. Shane removed his cowboy hat and tossed it on the table. She hesitated. The one thing more dangerous than being alone with Shane was being alone with his brother. To refuse, however, might raise Shane's suspicions, and she couldn't chance it. Okay. She slid slowly onto the bench seat, the faded upholstery on the cushions, pulling her jeans, and repeated 5 minutes for good measure. He plunked down across the seat from her, and a pleased grin came upon his face. Cassidy swallowed. The small dining table didn't provide nearly enough distance. Shane's appeal was infinitely more potent and up close. His sandy brown hair, worn longer than when he was competing, didn't quite cover the jagged scar beneath his ear and disappearing inside his shirt collar. A souvenir courtesy of his last ride on Wasabi. And those green eyes, intense ones, second ones twinkling with mirth, and next was hard to resist. Currently they searched her face. Cassidy tried not to show any signs of distress, weakening knees, or quickening her breath. "What's Hoyt up to these days?" She strove to sound mildly interested, which wasn't the case. "Same as always, heading to the rodeo in Austin this weekend." "Still married?" At the spark of curiosity in Shane's eyes, and she wished she posed the question differently. Now he'd think she cared about Hoyt's marital status. Well, she did, but not for that reason. "He and Cheryl are doing fine. Bought a house in Jackson Hole last year." "Jackson Hole in Wyoming. Good, Cassidy thought, plenty far away from reckless Arizona. Any kids yet? She cursed herself for needing to know. Nope, Shane shrugged. Still trying. Hoyt wants a big family, or so he says. A jolt shot through her. She attempted to hide it with a show of nonchalance. Tell me about your daughter. 22, 23, 24. Shane instantly brightened. Bria's 4. Not sure if she wants to be a princess or a soccer player when she grows up. What? No cowgirl? I'm hoping to change her mind. Cassidy's son, Benji, wanted to be a champion bull rider like his grandfather before him, and unbeknownst to him, but all to Cassidy and her mother like his father and Uncle Shane. She quickly shoved her hands beneath the table before Shane spotted them shaking. How was she ever going to keep from telling him about finding about Benji and telling Hoyt? She vowed to find a way. There were those who would disagree, claiming she should have told Hoyt from the beginning about Benji, that he had a right to know. Others, admittedly not many, who would side with her. It just wasn't Hoyt's nomadic lifestyle. It wasn't just Hoyt's lifestyle and party ways, which had been one of the reasons for their breakup. Cassidy couldn't take the chance of him fighting for Benji or possibly winning joint custody from Benji. She firsthand seen how parents living in separate towns divided a family. When her brother and Ryder had turned 14, he left to live with their father up until last fall, and she'd rarely seen Ryder and rarely spoken to Cassidy and Liberty and their mother. Their father's return had reunited the Becketts, but they were far from being a family, not in the truest sense. It hurt too much, and betrayal was too many lies littered upon their past. No way, no how was she putting their son through the same broken childhood she endured. She would not suffer the same heartbreak that she had devastated her mother when they lost Ryder. And it would happen, of course, that Cassidy was certain. Mom mentioned Bria would be visiting soon. Cassidy forced a smile. Shane, on the other hand, beamed. Every other weekend to start, was he planning on obtaining full custody of his daughter? Cassidy's anxiety increased. If Hoyt followed his brother's example, she pushed the unpleasant thought away. She's close by then. Mesa. Oh, that's a 45-minute drive. That's why I accepted this job. A glint lit his eyes, and his gaze focused on her. Now I have even more incentive. Page 24, 25, 26, and 27. Oh dear, Cassidy steeled herself, determined to resist him. Bria's mom okay with you taking her more often? Judy's been great. She wants Bria and me to have a relationship. But she lied to you about having a child. The uncanny similarities between Benji and Bria weren't lost on Cassidy. I understand her reasons, Shane said. I wasn't what you call a good father material. Now that I've quit my wild ways and found a job which keeps me in one place, Judy's willing to work with me. His brother, too, had quit his wild ways to become a rodeo announcer, but Cassidy didn't feel inclined to work with him. Not yet, and maybe not ever. It can't be easy for you seeing Wasabi every day. He's just another bull under my care. Her gaze automatically drew to his scar. She'd seen pictures posted on their mutual friends' Facebook pages. The gash, requiring 44 stitches, traveled from beneath his right ear down his neck to his chest. Miraculously, Wasabi's hoof had just missed an artery. Otherwise, Shane might have bled out. I'm glad you're all right. Her voice unwittingly softened. Shane responded with a heart-melting smile. No surprise, he'd inspired a legion of female fans during his years on the circuit. Was that the reason for Bria's mother's secrecy? It wouldn't have surprised Cassidy. Not my day to die, Shane said matter-of-factly. All the same, it was a terrible fall. How can you bear to look at Wasabi? Cassidy still shuddered when she passed the well house, even though the accident involving her and her father happened 25 years ago. Like Shane, she walked away when things might have been horribly different. He shrugged. It was just doing his job like any bull. I didn't take it personally. More charm. He could certainly lay it on thick, and Cassidy was far more susceptible than she liked. She abruptly stood. I need to go. Reaching for the cowboy hat, he also stood and waited for her to leave first. Drop by any time. The invitation was innocent, not so his tone, which hinted at something else altogether. 26, 27, 28. When she spoke, her tone was all business. If you need something, let me know. How about having dinner with me? She blinked. He didn't just ask her on a date, did he? I beg your pardon? Your dad mentioned a couple good restaurants in town. I could use someone to show me around, help me get the lay of the land, seeing as we're going to be working together. She shook her head. Benji's my son, and he has homework tonight. You could bring him along. Thanks, but no. He's had enough trouble with school as it is. I'd never get him to finish his homework if we went to dinner first. Maybe another night this week. Did the man ever give up? We'll see, she said, planning to stall him indefinitely. Outside the trailer, she allowed herself 2 full seconds to gather her wits before heading to the arena in search of her sister. Should Cassidy come searching for her, he'd find Cassidy doing exactly what she said, helping the writing lesson. Fortunately, Liberty was there talking to a student's mother. She finished just as Cassidy approached and met her halfway. "What's wrong?" Liberty said. Cassidy shook her head. "Nothing. You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost. The brother of one, perhaps. I was talking to our new bull manager." "Shane? Do tell." Cassidy planted her hands on her hips. "What does that mean?" "He's a nice-looking guy." "We work at a rodeo arena. There's a lot of nice-looking guys here." "But none of them have ever left you flustered. Didn't you two date once?" Cassidy ignored the question. "I'm not flustered. I'm annoyed. I have a lot to do, and I can't afford time it takes to babysit a new employee." "Right," Liberty laughed gaily before turning on her heel and leaving Cassidy to stew alone. She hated it when her baby sister was right. 28-29, moving forward. Page 38 is small, thank goodness. Cassidy, "Believe me, Mom, I've weighed the pros and cons. I'm not ready to tell Benji or Hoyt." Her mother sighed. "You didn't always feel that way." No, she hadn't. When she was 8 months pregnant, Cassidy had gone so far to locate Hoyt and drive to where he was living, only to learn he was engaged to Cheryl, a young widow who had lost her first husband unexpectedly. Putting herself in Cheryl's shoes, Cassidy had turned around and driven back to Reckless. She wouldn't be a home wrecker. Page 41. Oops. And the dryer keeps going off, I know. "I put up with the drinking and the bad business decisions," her mother continued, "but I couldn't let him endanger my children. Once the trust is gone, there's no getting it back." "You trust him now. At least you act like you do. You let him purchase the bulls when you swore you'd never even let him own them again, and the purchase had led to her father to hiring Shane." "There's no letting or not letting," her mother said. "We're partners, an arrangement requiring give and take on both sides." "What did he give?" From where Cassidy stood, her mother had done all the compromising. That was 41. Here's 42. "He agreed to put money aside for Benji's college education." Cassidy was taken back, especially when her mother named the amount. "His own personal money," her mother added, "not the arena's." She quickly recovered. "He can't buy my affections or give my forgiveness, and he can't buy off responsibility for what happened." "Did it ever occur to you that he's simply doing something nice for his grandson? He does love that boy, and Benji adores him." "He did," which rankled Cassidy to no end. "I'll tell him no. You can't stop him. It's his money. He can do whatever he wants, and when the time comes, Benji can accept it, with or without your consent." Cassidy liked that less. During the past 6 months, her life had been slowly spiraling out of control. First her father returned, then both of her siblings met their future spouses. Lastly, her father had hired Shane. Cassidy vowed anew to keep her son from her uncle's path as much as possible. The benefit would be twofold. In addition to keeping the identity of Benji's father a secret, to quell this wild and inexplicably attraction to Shane, anything else would be unacceptable. That's 42 and 43. Page 45. Cassidy among them. Their gazes were brief and connected before Shane looked away. He couldn't afford any distractions, and Cassidy was a big one. Since their encounter in the trailer 4 days ago, it seemed as though she made it a mission to avoid him. Often, like at last night's bull riding jackpot, he sensed her presence, only to turn and find her staring at him, or more often quickly averting her head. She was obviously drawn to him, if nothing else, out of curiosity, and the feeling was mutual. Why, then, did she run for the hills every time he approached? Her behavior just perked his interest further, and Shane wasn't a man to be put off indefinitely. Excuse me. Moving forward. Okay. We're going to get to page 52, it looks like. 49. Now, okay, all at once, Cassidy rounded the chutes. 50. passing her father and the vet on their way to the pen, and made straight for him. It was a nice change from her recent habit of avoidance. The expression of concern on her pretty face made him almost forget the pain that was shooting up his leg. "Are you okay?" she asked in a rush. "Never better. I'm serious, Shane." "He barely nicked me." She studied him critically, her eyes traveling from his head to his boots. "You're limping." He grinned. He couldn't help it, and lowered his voice. "I appreciate the concern, Cassidy. It means a lot to me." "Of course I'm concerned. You had a close call." "Any other reason?" He leaned in, a mere fraction at first, and then more. She abruptly drew back. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm thinking you're worried about me because you might like me a little." "Well, I don't." His grin widened. "Could have fooled me. I mean, I do like you as a fellow employee." Her cheeks flushed and then tripped over her own words. "And as an old friend." He flustered her, and though it shouldn't have pleased him, it did. "Right. You always had a big ego. Matched only by my—" He let the sentence drop. "Shane." "Confidence," he finished with a chuckle. "I guess you are okay. Don't know why I worried." She spun and would have left him in the dust if he hadn't grabbed her arm and pulled her swiftly to him. "Thanks." Lowering his head, he pressed his lips to her cheek, letting them linger. The contact wasn't much, not as far as kisses went, no more than a light caress, yet it sent a shock wave coursing through him with a kick of a lightning bolt. She must have felt a similar shock, for she let off a soft "oh," and then for one incredible moment melted against him. The next instant she tensed. "I have to go." "Why, Cassidy?" He searched her face. To his surprise and concern, he noted a fear in her eyes. "What are you afraid of?" "Nothing." Page 52. He wanted to contradict her, but this wasn't the time nor the place, not with her acting like a skittish colt, and not with her father standing close by, watching the two of them like a father watches a man who just kissed his daughter on the cheek. What would Mercer think if he knew about Shane's attraction to Cassidy? He might approve of it, then again he might oppose it. Maybe Shane should take a moment and step back from the situation. This job was too important for him to mess it out right out of the gate. The thrill of his encounter with Cassidy faded. Unfortunately, his attraction to her didn't. Try as he might, Shane couldn't stop staring as she walked away. Then again, he wasn't trying very hard. Okay. I want to keep going, but if we do, it looks like it's going to be going for a while. So it's a good start, right? And I do work the next few days. I don't know when I'll finish this book review with you, but sometime in the future. It's a good start. And as you can tell, it's going to get a good rating. Good, not great, but good. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Love y'all. Wash your hands. Keep your social distance. Wear your mask. And thank you, everyone, again, for your well wishes and birthday wishes. And I had got a question in the inbox that I didn't answer. Did I get the request to sing Mickey Gilley's Talk to Me for 2020 over again? Yes, and I got to be honest with you. I tried it once and I didn't even record it the first time, and I should have, because I did it right on cue, right the first time. Then after I went back to hit the record button and sing it again, by golly, if I didn't mess it up. So stay tuned in the future. I will sing Talk to Me redone. So, and God bless y'all.